So you are a self-professed foodie, and I want to ask if you can help us to better understand what that actually means, because I have a brother who lives in San Antonio, and he fashions himself a foodie as well. However, his definition seems to amount to simply eating at different fast food restaurants.
Oh gosh, no, that's not my definition of a foodie. So, yes, I think everyone has a different interpretation. For me, being a foodie means not just enjoying food, but just knowing the ingredients, how it's prepared, how it fits into your culture, maybe a little bit about the history of it. I love all aspects of food, from growing food, preparing it, the nutrition value of it, all of that. But I love learning about different ingredients and where they're from.
Mm-hmm. So just one question here then. Would it entail frequenting an all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have the chance to eat all kinds of sushi as much as you want in one sitting. I think it is.
Would you think that qualifies, Joy?
I would not turn down an invitation to an all-you-can-eat sushi.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you. And welcome to our first episode of our Intersectionality podcast series, brought to you by Northeast Valley Health Corporation in sunny San Fernando, California. I am Jessica Barraza.
And I'm Reginald Austin. And the theme of our Intersectionality series gives us an opportunity to better understand how we all experience both privilege and disadvantage at the same time.
It also allows us to describe and understand how all of our different personal and social identities come together or intersect and shape the way we experience life.
And for this series, this first episode at the very least, we have Joy Ahrens. Joy, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're coming to us from WIC. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there?
I am the director of the WIC program for Northeast Valley Health Corporation. We serve the San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valleys. We are a federally funded nutrition program. We serve pregnant women, postpartum women up to 12 months, and infants and children under the age of 5. We provide them with nutrition education, supplemental healthy foods, breastfeeding support, and referrals to the community. And I oversee the operations, making sure we follow policies. I have 10 sites, so there's a lot involved with overseeing the sites, and I oversee the budget. So anything WIC, it starts with me first.
So you wear a lot of hats. I wanted to ask, does WIC actually have a connection outside of the sites in which you work? So for instance, with respect to the community, is there any connection with grocers within the San Fernando and Santa Clarita Valleys?
Yes, we do have a connection with grocers because we do provide healthy supplemental foods. At WIC, they'll get an electronic WIC card that they will take back to the store and redeem it. Not every store may accept the WIC card, just certain ones. So we do have a liaison that, makes sure that those stores are following the WIC regulations and that they have the foods that they're supposed to have stocked up.
Oh, that's pretty interesting to hear. Well, now that we know a little bit what you do here with Northeast Valley Health Corporation, what are you like outside of it? Tell us more about Joy. Are you from the San Fernando Valley?
No, I'm not from the San Fernando Valley, although I was born in Hollywood. But
oh, interesting.
When I was 2 or 3, my parents moved to San Diego, and that's where I grew up. They live in a town called Chula Vista. They still live there, so that's where I went to grade school and high school. I moved to the San Fernando Valley in '96 after college, and then now I live in the Santa Clarita Valley. But yeah, I grew up in the San Diego area, and I hope to go back someday. It has great weather.
Yes, it is. So where did you go to school?
In Chula Vista.
Mm-hmm.
My high school was Castle Park High School. So it was a medium-sized school because Chula Vista is very close to the border. It's probably mostly Hispanic and then white. There's a lot of Filipino because San Diego's a Navy town. And I think I was probably one of 2 Chinese people that might have been at that school. So, but all the Asians were mostly Filipino and like a little bit of Southeast Asians.
So what type of Asian do you classify yourself as?
I consider myself Chinese American. And my parents were both born in the Philippines, but their parents immigrated from Canton, China to the Philippines. And that's where they were born, but we are Chinese.
There's an interesting story you were telling before about how your grandfather changed a family name. What was the motivation behind that step?
My grandfather was a businessman, and at that time in the Philippines, to own land, you had to be a native. And so if you know the history of the Philippines, they were conquered by the Spaniards, and many of them still do have Spanish last names, surnames, and so he changed his name. Our family name is Choy, Choy, to Alejandria. So, and I think he changed his first name too. So I think it was Alfredo. So my dad was born with that name, Alejandria. I was born with that name. Eventually, my older brother changed his name back to our Chinese name of Choi because that was a promise he made to my grandmother. And then my little brother did the same. I got married, so I take my husband's name, but also I kind of don't want to be called Joy Choi. So
That has a good ring to it, Joy Choi.
You would remember me.
Definitely we will with that name.
Absolutely.
So So a little bit told me that you went to UCLA. Go Bruins.
Yes, go Bruins.
So tell us about your studies there in UCLA.
Oh, I loved UCLA. That's probably, one of my fondest memories as a young adult. So, huge school, every culture that you can think of. They have a club for, almost everything. If there isn't, you can make one up. But love being lost in the giantness of UCLA and everything it has to offer.
You actually started off as a biology major at UCLA.
Yes.
And you had plans to attend medical school.
Yes.
You want to talk about those changes that happened there?
Yeah, I think when you're 18 applying to college, you kind of you have a very narrow view of what the world is. And because I was always good at math and sciences, it just, seemed natural to go into a science. And I remember from a young age, I told my mom I wanted to be a doctor, and she always clung on to that. So it was just like, okay, I guess I have to do this now. But eventually I switched over to kinesiology, and then UCLA stopped offering that as a major, and they made everyone that was a kinesiology major a physiological science major, which don't even ask me what it is, because it's, is it physiology? Yes. I feel like they just kind of made up that title. They still have that major, but I think in my junior year, I kind of knew I didn't want to go down that path of medical school, but I still wanted to stay in health sciences and help people, be part of the community. And so I kept that major, but then dabbled in public health. So the great advantage going to a large university, there's a lot of opportunities. And the School of Public Health, which is a graduate program, they do offer slots for undergraduates in their classes as a way to introduce students to the field of public health. So I took 3 classes in the School of Public Health, and I was hooked. I knew I wanted to go into public health, and from there I kind of researched what kind of majors there were, and I took nutrition as an elective as part of my major, and found out there was a degree called public health nutrition and this thing called registered dietitian. And so went down that path, and that took me to Loma Linda University, where I could get my master's of public health and fulfill my requirements to become a registered dietitian.
So it wasn't the doctor degree that your mom was hoping for.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. But you also met a special person in college, didn't you?
I did.
Who did you meet
I
there?
met my now husband at UCLA.
That's amazing. And from what I'm hearing is that you're in a multicultural marriage with a person from a small town, Iowa.
Yes.
How has that experience been for you?
It was very eye-opening being introduced to that culture. So my husband is white. He's mostly German with a little bit of Dutch. And yes, he's from a town called DeWitt, Iowa, which is like 20 minutes west of the Mississippi River. The town is quite small. I think it's like less than 5,000, which probably for Midwest, there's a lot smaller towns than that. But yeah, very, very different. It's very like Hallmark.
Okay.
And very white. And I remember the first time I ever went there of just everyone stared at me. And that was very uncomfortable. And they still do, but I'm older now, so I just I get over it. And I had mentioned it to my mother-in-law. I was like, everybody's staring at me. And she said, oh, Joy, they're just trying to figure out who you belong to. And I said, well, look at me. It's obvious I don't belong to anybody here.
Mm-hmm. And for that, like you also have a son.
Yes.
How old is your son?
He is 21, going to be 22 in like 2 weeks.
So you have a multicultural son. How has that experience been for your son, being in two different cultures?
I think he enjoys, having parents that are different cultures, and then just being a family. We have our own culture in a way. But there were times growing up that I could see him kind of being unsure about his identity. So, he has our surname Ahrens is Dutch. And when you look at him, you can tell he's Asian. And most people who don't know him, like when you look at him, you don't know that he's like half white, half Asian. You just see an Asian person. And in high school, most of his friends were white. Not all of them, and then in college, most of his friends were Asian. So when he applied to his high school, because we were doing like a district transfer, he had to fill an application, and there's the race, ethnicity checkoff box. And then you could only check off one. So, and he really struggled with that. And he asked me, Mom, which one should I check off? And I said, it's up to you. Which one do you identify most with? And he said, I feel white, but I think people expect me to check off Asian because I look Asian. Mm-hmm. And so, I didn't want to sway him, because it's kind of like asking, which parent do you like better?
Yeah.
Although I know he likes his dad better.
Yeah, he likes mom better.
Yeah. So I think he ended up checking off Asian from the simple fact that when you look at him, you see an Asian person.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a very interesting, because I have this in my family as well, where, for instance, my brother who lives just north of here, his wife is white, and of course he's black, and they have children that are mixed race. And it's always interesting to hear them think about how they, talk about how they navigate the world, so to speak, with darker skin than you would see with a white person, but you live in between these two worlds. And so where do you actually belong? And historically what happens is, like you're saying, your phenotype, which is basically what you look like, is the one that you end up going with. But do you think that there's something strange there for these people who are multiracial, that they have to essentially deny some part of who they are?
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, I think you hit it on the head that, by not checking off the other box, he was denying that other parent. So, and I think at that time we had filled it out. I was surprised that you could only check off one, because a lot of places now allow you to check off more than one box. But I think it was done statistically because, we looked up the website of the school and of course they have test scores and, it's by race ethnicity. So we kind of said like, well, go with the one that has the better test scores.
So then he is turning 22, which means he must be coming to the end of his undergraduate studies.
He is actually already done.
He's already done.
He's already working. He's living in the South Bay in a studio loft.
Okay.
Paying more money with his apartment than I do on my mortgage.
Sounds like a South Bay thing.
Yeah. So, but he's on his own, and I have a true empty nest now. So I'm secretly plotting what to do with his bedroom. I want to turn it into my craft room.
So I do want to ask you, Joy, like, raising a multicultural son, how did you best support him so that way he could feel as he is just a whole person and didn't have to choose from one culture to another?
I think we embrace like both sides of the family. We talk about it, about that, that he's different. We celebrate both cultures, so there's certain things we do in my family or eat. And then when we go visit his family in the Midwest, completely different. And so we try to respect, both sides. And although I just realized usually in October, October is Oktoberfest, and I try to be cheesy and always celebrate, the German side of the family and have potato pancakes and bratwurst and sauerkraut. But I missed the boat in October, but I try to incorporate that every once in a while with the family meals. So in addition to, some Asian dishes.
This is the JEDI Podcast. We will continue with our special guest, Joy Ahrens, after this. Stay with us.
Hello everyone, it's Brittany, the JEDI educator here at NEVHC, and I would like to remind you that our 25th annual toy drive is near. To make this year more memorable, we're hosting 2 events where we'll provide patient families with toys, grocery store gift cards, and pictures with Santa. We encourage you to get involved to help make this year's events merrier and brighter. Some ways that you can help are shopping NEVHC's Amazon wish list, bringing in a new unwrapped toy. You can contact our development department for event volunteer opportunities, or you can donate online at nevhc.org/Toy Drive 2022.
And we're back. You are listening to the JEDI Podcast. This is the first installment of our Intersectionality series, and we're continuing with this episode's great guest, Joy Ahrens.
Joy, you were talking about the German background of your husband's family a little bit, and you were in Cologne for a day. So it's really interesting to hear because you were at least there long enough to go on this tour of the city. And I wanted to get your impressions of what it was like. Did you get to try the foods? I mean, what was it like for you to be there?
Yeah, it was a very short trip. It was like a 10-day trip through Europe, and, Germany was one of the stops. We did have some German food in the hotel. So it's kind of what I expected. And I remember they had sauerkraut, and my family was like, oh, this is such good sauerkraut. And I make my own sauerkraut. And I said, is it as good as mine? And I'm like, no. My mother said, no, Mom. These are made by real Germans. So, but it was nice. We went on a tour down one of the rivers, and I got to see some castles from the distance.
Yeah. It's interesting because I actually used to live in Germany, and I've spent a lot of time in that region. I had a good friend that lived in Aachen, which is basically an hour away from Cologne. So fly into Cologne and then take the train to Aachen. And the food culture there is, well, living in Sweden for so long, it's very different in that sense, but also from American culture because they're known for their baked goods. The Swedes think they're very good at baking. I hope none of them are listening to this, but it's not as good, in my opinion, as the Germans are. Did you get a chance to try any of the sort of the local things or anything that's typically German in terms of baked goods?
No. I mean, when I think of German baked goods, the only thing that comes to mind is a Stollen. You know, what you get this time of year, which I look forward to. I think it's delicious. I like that almond flavor, but no, now I'll have to go back now.
You have to go back because I mean it's a fantastic thing. I would recommend that you actually go back during the Christmas markets.
Nice.
Because then you get to try a lot of delectable things that are just not usually available during the rest of the season. I guess you can find it, but there's a special thing that's tied with the cuisine there at that time. And I'm trying to think now, do we have anything that's really tied to the holidays that you don't see otherwise, other than this disgusting thing called fruitcake? Hopefully there are no fruitcake lovers in the audience. I'm sure
It
there
is
will be.
delicious.
Fruitcake.
Yes, fruitcake.
Okay.
Especially from Portos. That's actually really, really good.
I can't agree more. I would like to dissuade all of you from
We'll have to do a field trip and test it out.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, but I think it's just really interesting to talk about different foods.
Since we are talking about you being a foodie, Joy, you did say once that that the way you experience culture is by experiencing their cuisines. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, when growing in Los Angeles, living in Los Angeles, you're exposed to a lot of different cultures. And, when you learn about taste these foods, it kind of makes you curious about, what is the history of this food? When is it eaten? And you might learn about celebrations and holidays and, or maybe it's an ingredient that you use in your culture, but you use it differently. So I like that exploration of finding commonality between my culture and different cultures or just differences. I find that fascinating.
And I think one thing that we all have in common is we love rice. We love rice, but we all cook it differently.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, we definitely do. And at one point, I was with a group of my friends who were different parts of, there were Asians, different parts of Asia. So we had from the Philippines to China, and then you had me who was Mexican, and we're trying to make rice, and I think World War III would have broken out because I did not know that you had to wash your rice thoroughly in order for you to cook it. And I'm like, no, you got to season it. And they're like, no season. So we were bickering back and forth to see who cooked the best rice. And that's how I found out that even though we all love to eat this, we all cook it differently.
Yes, absolutely.
And of course, I have a superior way of preparing rice.
I doubt
Although
that.
I must tell you, it's not quite like you were talking about. Like, I don't think you have to wash the rice at all. I learned this method this is after I moved to Europe, where basically for every 1.5 deciliter, you just add 2.5 deciliters of water, and you just simply let it cook out. And it always comes out really perfect. It's fluffy, and I think it's probably better than the rice that you're preparing.
1.5 deciliters? We
Yes.
just use our finger. Is that the size?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just a fingertip
You need a cup.
of water.
Come on. So, but are you washing your rice before you actually cook it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what my mom taught me.
See, this is not right. But it does go back to this idea of understanding cultures through food, because as you've traveled around, you do see that it tells you a story. And I've had this, traveling through Europe and Asia and Africa and the Middle East, you get to understand people I'm always interested in what people have for breakfast. And when I was in Egypt, this was like this really interesting way that they were having breakfast. It was basically like a bean paste with oil in the middle, and they actually use it with bread. And I think that was the first time that I've ever seen anyone have beans for breakfast. But as it turns out, I think some Hispanic cultures also have beans as part of their breakfast.
Yes, we do.
And
Yes,
so
we do.
I thought this was a strange thing, because growing up, beans were always dinner. Which brings me to this idea that I think you can have eggs for dinner.
I disagree. I totally disagree.
What do you think, Joy? Can we get some settlement here?
I love eggs, so eggs for dinner sound good to me.
Wait, it just depends how we cook it. But if we're having like fried egg and scrambled egg for dinner, then I don't know. I'm very so against it. But if it's like a boiling egg in your salad, I get that. Or, in ramen, I understand that. But it just depends how you cook the egg. I don't know. What do you think, Joy?
I do love a good quiche.
But Joy, you've also studied the plant-based cooking Ruby. I think I'm saying it properly.
Yes.
How much focus does this type of cooking show in recipes that you actually use at home? And can you say something about the health benefits?
Yes, I had an opportunity to do an online cooking program through ruby.com. And it just so happened that the first one they offered was a plant-based certification program. And I was exposed to, different cultural recipes there. There was a course on noodles, and I had to make my own udon noodles, which I found out that the Japanese use their feet to knead the udon dough because
Interesting.
yes.
I don't think I'll look
I
at
did not use my
udon
feet.
noodles
Yes,
again,
I
the
did
same
not
way
use my
again.
feet. But I'm short, and so I did have to get on a chair to knead the dough on the counter because it is a tough dough. I can see why they use their feet because it's a tough dough to knead. But yeah, I enjoyed that, and I do try to incorporate on my table different recipes from different cultures because it's just so fun to explore, and because we're so lucky to have access to a lot of ingredients here in Los Angeles, why not? I like to try something new.
Before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. Is there anything that you would think is sort of unique to your family that is served at the Thanksgiving table?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because for the past few years, we do not have a traditional Thanksgiving meal, what would be considered American. We do a Chinese hot pot. We've been doing it for many years because my family enjoys it. We have Thanksgiving at my parents' house, and, they're getting older, and in terms of preparation, it's so much easier for my mom to prepare. So we have some pots of simmering broth on the table, and then we have the ingredients, thinly sliced meats, maybe like fish fillet, fish balls, shrimp, some greens like watercress. My mom makes a thing that she's coined Chinese salsa, which is basically yellow chilies with cilantro, soy sauce, and some olive oil. We use that as our condiment. And so it's kind of like fondue, but broth style. So we really enjoy it because it's a lot of ingredients, and it's just so fun. And, that's what we've been doing for the past few years. And when I tell people this, I get mixed reactions. Some are like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I have in the past few years been told twice, because it sticks out to me, that they were appalled at this dinner because it was so un-American, which is a little bit of offensive to me because I am American, and it is a day of gratitude and Thanksgiving, and, that's how we choose to celebrate.
And I think just surrounding family around hot pot is a perfect way to celebrate Thanksgiving.
Yes, I do make mini pumpkin pie tarts.
Okay, so I guess we're going to be joining you for Thanksgiving this year, Joy. Definitely.
We're now coming to the end of our podcast with Joy Ahrens, our fantastic guest. But before we let you go, I would like to ask you this question. What would people with whom you work be surprised to know about you?
Oh, gosh. That I have to admit? I think people would be surprised because I come off as very quiet and calm that I sometimes swear like a sailor. So,
Joy, really? I would never
That is
thought of
hard
that.
to believe,
Yes,
actually.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yes, I find it very therapeutic to drop some F-bombs here and there.
As it should.
But that would be like the last thing I would think. And so I think that you should be nominated for an Oscar for convincing us that you never swear.
I can't control it. I don't do it at work.
Okay.
But yeah, if you see me on my day off and I'm doing something frustrating, yeah, some not so nice words may come out of my mouth.
Yeah, that's understandable. Absolutely. We would like to thank this week's incredible guest, Joy Ahrens. We would also like to thank our production team. This episode was written and produced by Jessica Barraz and I with the technical support from our resident genius, Brittany Galicia. Our podcast will be available bi-weekly, and you can find us wherever you find your other favorite podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. We'd love to hear from you on all things Jedi. If you have a show idea, please reach out to us at jedipodcast@nevhc.org. Until next time,